Good afternoon and welcome, BBN, to another edition of the Bleed Blue Daily Show. I am Paul. Today, I'm joined by Jaden, who's always doesn't remember what time it is when we do this and that I start it, and his camera's always off. And we also have a special guest host who was on as a guest himself not too long ago, Stephen Peak from KSR. What's up, guys? How's it going? Happy post-Thanksgiving.
How's it going?
I don't feel like an overinflated whale after yesterday, so I think that's a good thing.
And our Dolphins took an L. So
my internet here.
Your internet looks terrible. Just turn your video off and just do audio and see if that's fine. Sometimes we do that.
A little better.
You sound fine. You just look bad. So don't. Yeah. Yeah, our Dolphins. It's just that was not a fun game for us last night.
No, but it's kind of this. We're from Miami. I mean, quarterback's from Hawaii.
No, other teams like real Dolphins expedition.
No, it's real. I think that somebody had a sign that was like 0-6 in the last 6 games, played below 40 degrees or something like that. So no, it's a real thing. But you know, I was telling Paul last night. I've been a Dolphins fan since 2001. I've seen I think 0 playoff wins. So it's also might have something to do with just haven't been a great franchise. It probably has a little bit to do with it.
It's a playoff win.
Yeah, I know. I've seen 2 playoff games, but
you've seen more than that. We went in 2008 against with Pennington when we won the division.
Yeah, Ronnie Brown and with those guys.
The Ravens. I think the Ravens won the Super Bowl that year, though.
I think I've seen 3 playoff games. But yeah, you know what I want to see one day? I want to see Kentucky football in a playoff game. What are my chances of seeing that, Paul? I know you're more locked in to the football program.
I think that you have a chance of seeing it.
I mean, I would say, what do you guys think? How often should Kentucky make the playoffs in football? Like once a decade?
Or compete?
You mean like go on a run?
No, like compete.
Oh, try to get it. Yeah, they should be in the running for it. I feel like once every 6 years. Is that?
I'd say 5.
5?
Yeah, I'd say 5.
And so, like 2018,
I think I thought we were in.
We should be in that conversation. We were like,
I thought we were 12. I thought we were 12. I thought we were 12 and Penn State was 10 when we played in that bowl game.
Well, like every time you have a year like that, you should get a big class, and when they get to be seniors, you should like 5 years every 3 you actually they are.
So I'd say this: in a decade, what Kentucky should do is they should be in the mix 4 times and make it at least once. I think that would be. And then, if you're in the mix, maybe in a decade you go 3 for 4. Maybe in another one you go 1 for 4. Right? I think. Mm-hmm. But I know the revenue share. A couple things I know is the revenue share is going to change the whole dynamic with us. I think Mitch is finally getting out of the way a little bit when it comes to NIL. People don't really fully realize where that was. I think we were really slow to react. I know Roush put out a pretty good article about that. If you guys haven't read it, go check it out. I think that some philosophical changes will also give us a little bit of a leg up, I think, from where we've been. And look, I know, and I think it's this too. And I think everybody would agree. Some of it's been coaching, but some of it's been depth in games where we needed more depth. The biggest difference between Kentucky and Georgia is our backup linebacker is not a 5-star name pop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if I think Alex Safari is a dog. I think he's going to be a great linebacker. I think he's got a chance to play the next level, but he's 15 pounds underweight and he's just learned to play the position. So when you're subbing, right, like you got a guy like him coming in and he can make plays, but he can also get exposed to the same thing. When you have Max go out, you got Try Nichols coming in. Now Nichols is a great potential, but Georgia's got 3 of those dudes.
Yeah.
Right. That's the difference between Kentucky and some of it is coaching, some of it is youth, some of it is inexperience. And when you go down, 1 or 2 guys, I mean, look what happened at Auburn. We had offensive linemen playing defensive line. Like, you ever see that? Do what?
It's a permanent.
He's a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
They liked, and he's now. So that's a fun little thing that happened.
Well, you're right about I like Teron Nichols. I went to his announcement in Cincinnati, and I've liked what I've seen from him in flashes this year. But you're right. You're kind of replacing starters with guys who are, I don't want to call them a project, but it's like they're not SEC yet.
They're not ready.
I see it. I see it coming. But Josh Allen was a 2-star and he was like skinny when he got to Kentucky.
Josh Allen wasn't that good his first 2 years. Like he had flashes in the pan, but then you had his junior year where he kind of came out a little bit, and then the senior year, obviously, where he becomes a top 10 pick. That's the piece that Kentucky has. That's where when people see and think about it, right? Kentucky doesn't have a stable of those guys coming through, right? Like, but I think, what do we have? Six top 150 players, 6, 8, something like that in this recruiting class. I think we're gonna. I think there's a flip coming next week. I think I didn't know. So we had heard about it, and then I think Roland actually said there's a guy visiting this weekend. I think he's a Big Ten commit, so I think that would be the guy. He's like a 4-star.
This might be the most impressive I've seen Kentucky recruit, because when you look at
high school, especially,
and it's not even just the kind of guys they're bringing in, but it's like they're on the verge of, unless they upset Louisville, going 4-8, where you got the whole fan base really sort of talking about is Mark Stoops coming back? You got all this stuff going on, this outside the program stuff, that this kind of buzz that's happening,
the noise.
Yeah, and yet they're still bringing in a great class. How do you do that?
I think it's because of the aspect that the team never quit. So that tells you no matter what happens, what you think about's going on in the locker room, the staff hasn't lost the team, right? Now, maybe they've lost a guy or two, but I don't think they've lost the team. Every top 10 team, if you go back to Louisville, Kentucky has had the game. It has been in doubt in the fourth quarter. Every single top 10 teams they played, they're 2-3 in their last 5 against top 10 teams. And considering 4 of those 5 were on the road, that's not terrible, right? It's not horrendous. I think we could have had a better record. It's been in those games where you've got a Vandy or you've got an Auburn and you're down a couple guys and and maybe you don't play well or the ball doesn't bounce your way. That's where Kentucky's had a problem. I mean, it's really not been against the big teams. The big teams we've played fairly well against, I feel like. But I think kids see that. They see that there's opportunity to play. They see that there's especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think there's a style there that, we've had. When we've been fully healthy, this team's been a top 10 defense, right? So I think that's a big part of it. Plus, you get to play here, and I think it's places like Kentucky, I think will benefit a lot more moving forward from NIL and the transfer portal. Maybe the reverse way where they get guys that come in, maybe they are getting in from high school because they might play earlier, and maybe then they're like, well, listen, I go to Kentucky if we're really good, a bunch of guys come in, then I stay, and if I'm not, I come in for play a year or two, then I go to Alabama or Oregon or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw Jeff Badette do that, right? Like he came in, he played here, did really well, went to Oklahoma, and it got him in the league, right? So I think that there's things like that. You see those parallels.
Got him in the XFL also.
Yeah. And I know. So we are working. I know. So behind the scenes, producer Joe's talking with Cameron Mills right now to make sure all the links and everything work. So Cameron hopefully should be on very shortly. I know people are probably going to be logging on for that. For the most, obviously everybody wants to hear about the guy from the shot heard around the bluegrass.
There you go. I watched it several times last night in preparation.
Can you just talking about this, how many guys do you know of in their college career that went to 3 straight Natty title games?
Man, not many.
Outside of like the old like UCLA teams. Yeah, like in the
has
modern,
anybody?
Let's say 80s to now, is there anybody that's done that?
I mean, I wouldn't think so because transferring was not as common, and I don't think there's been anybody that's played in 3 straight title games. And to think that Kentucky was really just like a couple free throws in regulation away from a three-peat in a modern era. We just kind of show that Kentucky just dominated the 90s. I mean, even when you want to go, you go all the way back to 92 from the Leitner shot on even to 99. I think they lost in the Elite Eight to Michigan State.
So I thought that was 01. Wasn't that
they lost to them in 01? Well, Patrick Sparks is 05. They lost to them. Did we just lose to Michigan State a lot? No, I think
maybe.
I think 99, they beat Kansas. Scott Padgett hit a 3 to beat Kansas or to tie the game. They won in overtime in the I want to say the Sweet 16. Might have been round of 32. Kansas didn't have a very good seed that year.
In the 90s, we went to the Elite Eight, 92, 93, 96, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. And we went to the Final Four, 93, 96, 97, 98. So we went to
just ridiculous.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We were in the Elite Eight 7 out of 7 years, and that's 7 out of 9 years. By the way, that's not 7 out of 10. That's 7 out of 9 because it was in 92.
Yeah. So yeah, we lost to. We played Kansas. They were a 6 seed. Beat them in overtime in the round of 32. In the Sweet 16, they had set it up for it to be a Kentucky-Utah rematch, but Miami, Ohio upset Utah. So Kentucky played Miami, Ohio, scored 58 points and won, and then played Michigan State and lost to them by 7.
So Michigan State's beat us in the because Michigan State won the Natty in 99. I was there. What is that?
Or Connecticut won, but they won with Mateen Cleaves. Like I think the next year, 2000, they beat Florida.
I thought it was 99. Oh no, that was Duke, right?
Yeah, well, the Connecticut beat Duke. 99. Duke won in 01.
In St. Pete in the
yes, it was. Yep. Yeah. Which is where coming full circle. Here you go. That's where I believe that's where Cameron Mills hit the shot to put Kentucky ahead against Duke. Is that right?
In 98.
Yeah, I think it was in St. Petersburg also. I want to say, or was it in is it Tropicana? Was it in
Tropicana?
Something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that like, I know we'll talk about this when Cameron comes on, but like, but I mean, I was 8 years old in 98 when I was, so I was 6 when they went to the championship in 96, 97, 98. I mean, I just thought the national championship was just something Kentucky played in every year. Like, I think, like I didn't realize that when they lost to Michigan State in 99 that was a possibility. And the way that they did it in 98, a lot of people will say, and I'd love to know Cameron's thoughts on this, because I know some people still say like Tubby Smith won with Pitino players, but when you go up and down that roster, I mean, there's good players, but there wasn't an Antoine Walker or a Derek Anderson. He's
in the lobby. Should we go ahead and bring him in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we will just welcome to the show the man who hit the shot heard round the bluegrass, a 2-time national champion with the University of Kentucky, Cameron Mills. How you doing, sir?
Hey guys, how are y'all? Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you great. Thanks for taking time to jump on. We had to get Steven on here. He said you were his childhood hero, so he had to come in and guest host for the show today. So no pressure on living up to those expectations.
How old are you, Steven?
34. I was 8 years old in 98.
Yeah, that didn't make me feel old at all. So, like at this point in my life, everything hurts, everything's sore, and those who I was a hero to, they've all got children, maybe even grandchildren now. So it's become fun.
I'm a little older than him. I was 10, or sorry, I was 12 in '98. So I was a little. You won't feel
fair. I was only 22 in '98. So that kind of makes sense. But just looking back over 25 years, it's just it just doesn't seem like it was 25 years ago or 30 years ago, I guess now.
Oh my!
Or getting close to 30 years, I should say.
So my wife is a UK grad. She's younger than me, and I'm almost at my I hit my 20-year college or high school graduation already, and she looked at me and she's just like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Babe, I'm like 6 years older than you. Come on."
Did you go to any of your reunions?
No, I don't care that much.
I haven't either. And I love my high school. I mean, I just haven't. I've maybe got 2 or 3 friends that I've kept up with from high school, but I've never been to a reunion. And to be fair, we weren't very good about planning. Like we didn't have a 5-year, we didn't have a 10-year. I think we had a 13-year just because we didn't have a 10-year. So
Well, I got 3 kids under 5, so doing anything right now, including going to UK games, is not very easy. We were going to go, I think, to the Lipscomb game, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And then
it's hard to get tickets right now. Mark's made it. I mean, with the exception of the 2 exhibition games, and I think it was because it was student seating, but that the end zone, upper deck end zone where the flag is, the American flag is, it was empty the first 2 exhibition games. Now, since honestly, I want to say since the Duke game, but I think it was starting to happen before that. After everyone saw like how much fun they were to watch play. It's filled up, and I think the last couple of games, I don't know what the stats say, but I feel like the last couple of games have been sold out. But like my brother just called a little while ago and said he was thinking about bringing his wife and his boys down for the game tonight. Can you help get tickets? And I'm like, I can try, I can do my best, but it's just one of those things where it's just hard to get them right now, which is awesome to be in that situation. But it's also frustrating to because I have people last minute say, "Can you help me get tickets?" I'm like, I might have been able to last year, but right now, not right now. Not until maybe we lose a game. Maybe I don't know. So.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of early Cal years, especially with the big games, right? I mean, that Arkansas ticket is you might have to sell a kidney or a child to get in.
Did you all? I don't know. Oh, did I erase it? I know I didn't erase it. It's an article that came out. I want to try to find it real quick because I think I find this fascinating. It may take me a minute or 2 to find it on, let's see. Where is it? It basically was an article. Now, to be fair, it was written by like one of the Arkansas blogs. So, we've got our Kentucky basketball blogs.
Yeah.
But it was basically saying, I got to find this because I think this would be a great place to talk about it. Let's see if it's in here. But basically, it was about how UK fans are still obsessed with Calipari and his quote unquote failures, and then just based on the headline of the article, it seemed to blame the fans for the early exits from NCAA tournament the last few years, and how the fans were the ones that made it. Cal was just the fans drove him out. And I read the article, or I read the title and started reading the article before I jumped on with you guys, and I thought, this is just nuts. And then I see it's from like a Arkansas fan blog kind of thing. I'm like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. But I mean, and even in the first of it, it said Calipari ended his 25-year relationship with Kentucky.
It's a long.
And I was like, dude, you don't even have your facts right. Why are you writing an article at all? Try 15 years. So anyway, I don't want to waste your.
Yeah, you didn't play for Cal, did you?
It down. But it was it was interesting the point that it was written. It wasn't interesting in the point that the gentleman was making who wrote it, but it was basically like they were, the Kentucky fans are just fascinated by the Illinois loss, right? That there were more tweets from Kentucky fans or people who said they were Kentucky fans about that to Arkansas because we quote unquote were enjoying the fact that Cal's had 2 early losses and we're 6-0, which it was just I don't know. It just the whole attitude of the article was like. It just calm down. It's early in the season both ways.
I'll say this: I'm very fascinated with. I've watched every Arkansas game. I've never done that before, but I think this year is just different. That would have been Kentucky's team, basically. I mean,
3 of them. I mean, that's the crazy. Well, and then Boogie Flan, I guess, would have been here.
So right, and like Billy Richmond and Carter Knox. I look at that team and I'm like,
in
a lot of ways. Yeah, Big Z. Yeah, right. And he's probably their best player. I mean, or Adu Thiero probably. But
it was so much fun just watching, because after Thanksgiving dinner yesterday, we turned on the Arkansas-Illinois game, just because I haven't seen him play at all this year. And just seeing DJ on the floor, Big Z on the floor especially. So of all the former players from last year, other than Reed, I just felt like I just cared more about Z, because he was here he had never left. I don't think he'd ever left Croatia before, which I think is where he's from. And I know he's from Western or Eastern Europe, but I don't think he'd ever left. And he was here. He was terrified of being here. And I think it's one of the reasons he went to Arkansas with Cal was like, that's his family. It's the only family he's got here. So, but watching him yesterday, it was fun because he wasn't nervous. He was actually bossing dudes around. Like, he was like the leader on the court to some extent. So just watching that growth was fun. Watching Adu Thiero's growth, because he is an absolute terror.
He reminds me of Dwayne Wade a little bit.
Yeah,
if he can get his shot at the next level.
Say, he can't shoot as well, but it's fun to watch these guys grow. And I know they're no longer Wildcats. I get it, but look, as Mark Pope says, once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat, and he's right. So these are still guys that I personally feel attached to some degree. But at the same time, I when they visit Rupp in February or something,
February 1st.
Yeah, I hope we beat him by 60. So it's kind of like when Coach Pitino was at Louisville. I rooted for Coach P to have his most success ever there. That's what I wanted, but I wanted him to lose every single game.
Yes,
it makes no sense. It can't.
No,
happen,
I get that.
It's kind of how your allegiance gets formed.
That's how I feel about Arkansas. I want to see those, Adu Thiero. I want to see Big Z do well, but I want him to lose every game. I'm sorry, because I don't want to look. I don't want to look at Fayetteville and be watching them have success, or let's say they go to a Final Four. And I don't want to okay, great. You took basically, it's Kentucky Red now just went to the Final Four. Yeah. But I think it'll be interesting in the next few years if that's the feeling Kentucky fans have.
I think honestly it'll die down. But I think, to be honest, from what we've seen from Kentucky so far this year, I think the anger, it's like the Pitino thing. I mean, it took UK fans a long time to get over, even after he had left Louisville, to kind of get over that. And then, there was at Big Blue Madness this year, there was that awesome moment where Coach P was even terrified. And he's backstage or back in the hallway with all the former players, and he's back there terrified. Like, he did not know what kind of reception he was going to get. And I told him,
wow.
And I told him, I was like, Coach, I promise you, like, they're over it. I mean, they're over it. And they're over it probably more than anything because that video he put out after Mark got hired, basically saying, I will donate to Kentucky's NIL. To support the program.
He's part of 500 Strong for football too.
Yeah, I know. And he's always said, and I don't think he's even quite, silent about it or secret about it. He's always said he regretted leaving here, which is, I always feel like it's kind of an unintended slant to every place he's been along the way. But I think he's being honest about it. I think he regrets leaving here. And again, it's not like he's failed anywhere he's gone along the way. He's been successful everywhere. And I mean, St. John's, for crying out loud, I haven't checked on him in the last few, I guess in the last week, but they were in the top 25 this year. And I don't want to get into the rankings because I wholeheartedly just am disgusted by the whole idea of preseason rankings and early season rankings. But it says something that St. John's was not there last year, had a big Creighton win, obviously. But it's taking him, 3 years, his third year there, to resurrect the program, basically, which is what he does better than anything. He resurrects programs.
What was it like kind of talking about that with Pitino, at Madness, but also, with a bunch of you guys also coming off the bus when Pope was announced? When that happened, did you think that there was going to be 20,000 plus in that? Like, I thought everybody laughed, and it wasn't like a negative thing, right? Like, it was kind of the funny thing.
Oh, yeah.
Kentucky really didn't think this through very well because it was at that point, it was, and I said this in a tweet and it kind of went viral. I said, this is a revolt of the UK fan base and a rejection of the last 4 years of everyone dogging us for for hiring everything, right? The last 4 years and the last month. And I think it was that whole, we were showing you that Cal was not the brand, it's Kentucky was the brand. And it's not, that was a big moment. What was that like for you though? And kind of being a part of that?
It was amazing. And it was amazing on two levels, I think, for me. And I don't want to speak for the other former players, though I think a lot of them would agree with this. And by the way, my camera is here, but my screen is here.
Oh, you're good.
So when I'm looking here, I'm looking at you guys. I just thought about that. It may look rude that I'm not looking at these guys. So my camera's here, and I keep forgetting that.
You're good. You're good.
But it was for two reasons. It was amazing. Number one, we're literally on the bus. Like we had all met in the Lexus room, which is like the nicest of the reception rooms at Rupp now, and we're all meeting in there. It's a ton of us. Mark even came in at one point and addressed the entire group. And you're talking like, I don't know, 100, 150, 200 people in that room. Maybe that might be exaggerated, but Mark came in and addressed us and just kind of had a moment with, and you've got ex-managers, you've got ex-players with their spouses, and even a lot of support people that were there when Mark was there. And so from that point of view, it was kind of like we had a mini reunion before he was introduced. And then we're on the bus. So they got all the former players, just the former players, stacked us on the bus. They wanted the 96 team in the very back with Mark. Mark is back there. We're arguing with him over, because and this was all sincere, he didn't want to get off the bus holding the trophy, right? The 96 trophy. He didn't want to do that. We had to convince him to do that because, like, Mark, first of all, you got to do it. You're the new head coach. It just makes sense. And
he did it in 90, and he did it in 96.
Exactly. And he had forgotten about that. Like, we're reminding him, like, you realize you're the one that got off the bus in Rupp in 96 holding the trophy. So we're like acting it out for him. All right, you got to hold it with this hand up. Like, because some of us remembered like the very moment and the photographs of it. So we're like telling. So from that perspective, it was just awesome, like having that reunion kind of moment, which we've had, 2 or 3 since then, which have been great. Meaning, like, 96 guys and 95 guys, and then just having the reunions of like at Madness, however many there were of us that showed up. I mean, it was a show up because kind of what you said. It was, hey, it's not a rejection of Cal. It was an excitement over one of us is at the helm. I mean, and not just any one of us, because it couldn't have been just any of us. Because I mean, I don't think, honestly, and no offense to any of the former players that are now coaching, I don't think anybody could have taken this job other than Mark Pope. I don't think there's a former player out there that could handle it, that was ready for it. Because look, this place wears you down, and I think Calipari is proof of that. I think he just got, and I think Tubby was proof of that when he left. It's just, you can only be so successful. And look, they were both successful. I mean, I know everyone says Tubby never got back there, never did anything after the 98 championship. Well, he got to 3 or 4 Elite Eights, and those Elite Eights, we were a bounce away from going back to the Final Four.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and then Calipari got us to 4 Final Fours, 3 title games, and 1 title. So both of them have had success. So it's not really a rejection of them or Cal specifically, but it was this acceptance of exactly what Mark said at the press conference. And I always find it just calling it a press conference because it was a pep rally.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they interrupt the pep rally to let the media ask questions. And I remember sitting with my wife, and I'm like, what are we doing? This is stupid. Nobody wants to hear from these knuckleheads. Let's just let Mark keep talking, because every time he says something, the crowd goes wild. But we're on the bus and we're having that conversation with him, and we asked somebody like, how many people are out there? And they looked at us and they said, I mean, we planned for 5, but I think there's around 15. I'm like, 15 what? He said, like 15 people? They said, no, 15,000. And then we drove out, and we're looking around, and it's like it's almost precisely the awe that we had in 96 and 98, even in 97 when we drove out after the championship games, and there's 23,000 people there to welcome us. And in that moment, it was 22,000 people there to welcome Mark. And so we were all kind of on the bus in awe. None of us expected it. And then we find out afterwards that they had turned 5,000 people away.
Yeah.
So I think all of it might have been for a lot of people a rejection of Cal, but I think for the most part, and I think this is precisely what Mark said and why he said what he said, is it was a acceptance of the transition of, look, there's nothing wrong with trying to get kids to the NBA. I admire Cal if that.
I don't think it was much Cal. I think it was in defiance of what had been said by the media and other people, like Cal's the brand and all of that kind of stuff, not necessarily Cal himself. Does that make sense?
Well, see, it's funny you say that because I never felt that way. I never felt, and I'm sure there were media that might have said that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that Cal does or Cal did is that, and it's smart to do this. He got labeled kind of as a used car salesman because everything was about recruiting. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a bad thing. And look, Mark's not going to be any different. Mark's going to go out as he's already done and try to get the best players available. And some of those players are going to wind up being one and dones. I mean, because again, we can blame Cal all we want for this one and done attitude. It's not Cal's fault. It's the NBA's fault because of their rules. All Cal was doing was going out and getting the best players he could get. And if you want to blame him for anything, maybe it's fair to say he was pushing some out the door early, or, you know, so he could make sure he had room for his next 5 coming in. That might be a fair criticism. I don't think Mark's going to find himself in that position because I don't think he's going to shove anyone out the door until they're ready. But it's a tough thing to deal with, especially with the portal. I mean, the portal's changed everything because now you got to go out and recruit players on the portal, and then you got to recruit freshmen, and then you got to decide what's more important. Am I going to put more money on the portal? Or am I going to put more money on the freshmen? Do I want success now, or do I want to hope that I can keep these kids for 3 years, grow them into what I want them to be, so they're ready to go junior and senior year? And I know with the portal, that changes that too, because they can come play for you 1 year, decide that, you know what, you're recruiting over them, or they're not going to get much playing time the next few years. This isn't what I thought it would be, so I want to go somewhere else. And I'm a fan of the portal. I love it. I think it was always unfair for the coaches to be able to go wherever they wanted to go, to make a promise to a kid and say, hey,
I agree.
I want you to come here and play for me for 4 years. Look at a mom. I want your son to come. I'm gonna take care of your kid for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And then they get more money, and all of a sudden they're gone. And what happened to that promise, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I always thought it was unfair. So I'm happy with the portal, but I will say it's made things chaotic. And I think if they wanted, I think this would help. Is look, you get one free transfer, right? You one time you can go somewhere with no penalty. You don't have to sit out. But after that, we're going back to the old way of thinking where you can't just go. And look, we've got players on our team last year, this year, that have played for 4 different teams in their 5 years of college basketball. So anyway, I don't know so much. I just know things are different, and I think just being able to be at practice a lot this year, because under Cal, you know, I was allowed to go every now and then, but as I've told UK Sports Information, and I say this with a smile on my face, and I don't mean it sincerely, but it's like, you're not keeping me from practice. There's one person that can keep me from practice, and that's the head coach. If he don't want me there, I'll leave. But I'm just showing up when I want to show up. And the reality is, every former player has that invitation. Mark said that. Anybody who wants to come, any former player wants to come practice, you come to practice. So it's just being down there and watching the total change of atmosphere. I mean, it's just night and day different from even what I expected, because I expected Mark to come in and be very similar to Coach Pitino, forgetting that Mark had not just been coached by Pitino. He'd been coached by Larry Bird. He'd been coached by George Karl. I mean, he's had 11 years on his own, and he's even changed the way he coaches from that 11 years. So that vibe that you get when you go to practice, when you go to walkthrough, that we see in the games of guys smiling and just, I mean, again, getting joy out of setting someone else for a dunk, or, you know, the way they whip the ball around and pass the ball. It's just fun to watch. I mean, even the last game, they didn't shoot well at all. They still won by almost 20, but it was still fun to watch. And that's what's been so enjoyable, among many other things so far.
Speaking of real quick, Steve, speaking of the transfer portal, we had Oliver Simmons on the other day.
Yeah.
And he said you're the reason why he transferred, because you were never in the dorm. So he just didn't have anybody to talk to.
That's not true at all. Oliver, okay, so first of all, I'm going to say this, and Oliver knows, I love Oliver. Oliver's one of those guys. And you know what the funny thing is? Oliver's one of the guys, like Coach Pitino has always kind of had a rule. He's like this, where he put a tweet out the other day that, you know, for every, or I think it was yesterday, you know, his Thanksgiving, or, you know, how thankful he was to all of his former players and how hard they worked for him, which I read it, and I think I was the 29th response. I don't know if the other 28 were former players, but I responded and just said, you know, same to you, Coach, because what caught me was and worked hard for me. Because honestly, Oliver was my roommate his freshman year, my sophomore year. And I mean, Coach is brutal. I mean, Coach is absolutely brutal. And it's hard to play for him. And Oliver came in as a freshman. That's when Coach had the JV team. So Oliver, myself, Nazi Muhammad, and Jason Latham, who was the other walk-on from that year, who was only with us 1 year, we all played JV, and it wasn't fun. I mean, it just wasn't, especially when we get beat, because we got beat by a high school team. Our JV team got beat. Well, it was Oak Hill Academy, but still was a high school team. If we lost the game, JV game, Coach would be, even though Coach wasn't there, Coach wasn't at our JV games, he would be as mad at us next practice as he would be for, if the varsity team had lost. But Oliver left, I think, in part because it's hard to make that adjustment, especially as a freshman, to being, who you are, like what you expect. Because look, when Coach comes to recruit you, and every coach does this, they're nice, they're sweet, they're kind, they're buttering you up. The moment you sign on the dotted line, that relationship changes. It's not a bad thing. It's just, it changes. Now I'm going to yell at you a lot, right? And that was hard for me. I went home 5 times my freshman year trying to quit. Now, I had something that Oliver didn't have, and that was I had a family 5 miles down the road. I mean, I grew up in Lexington, or at least had my high school years here. I had plenty of people surrounding me, and I was a sophomore. When you come in as a freshman, that's when I tried to quit, and thankfully my parents wouldn't let me. So I never blame Oliver for leaving. I wish he had stayed, but what I love is that even though he went to Florida State, and had a couple good years there, I think he would consider himself more of a Wildcat than a Seminole, even though he was only with us for a year, maybe a year and a half. But I think it was a year and a half. But I mean, I love Oliver. Oliver's like, when he has visited, he came down for the for Madness. He was here for a couple of things. I think he came down on his own, just went to a practice, and then went back to, I think he's up in Minnesota. But it's just fun because Oliver is a Wildcat, and he still feels like that, even though he didn't graduate from here in his career here. And I love that. But
he sounds just like Pope, by the way, which was weird.
What do you mean?
His voice sounds a lot like Pope when we talk.
Oh, really?
To him.
I've never noticed that. That's funny. I'll have to look at that next time I'm around Oliver to see if he sounds like Pope. I will tell you this. As far as former players or former teammates of mine that are students of the game, I mean, and most of them are coaches. The guys that were students of the game are coaches. Scott Padgett, Alan Edwards, Steve Masiello, Oliver Simmons, Anthony Epps. I mean, these are guys that, despite what level, they saw the game from a different level as people like me. I watch the game now, not even close to being a student. I'm one of those people that watch the ball. And when you're a student of the game, you don't watch the ball. Yeah. You watch everything else other than the ball.
Yeah.
I still watch the ball. And that could have everything to do with why I was a horrible defensive player and but it's just fun watching those guys kind of grow up and kind of become. But Oliver's got the same. I've never heard the similarity in the voice, so I'm anxious to hear that. But he knows the game, like all this analytics stuff and the X's and O's that we've seen Mark implement. I mean, Oliver knows all that stuff too. I mean, like I've literally asked Oliver last time he was here because I do the pregame show, and so I'll go to some people who I know are seeing things that I'm not seeing, and I'm asking them questions. And Oliver's one that I'll go to and say, "Hey, you were at practice the other day. What stuck out to you?" Because I know they're going to see stuff that I don't see, and then I've just got to do hopefully a good job of defining that on air. But I need people like that because I'm just not a student of the game, and there are guys like Oliver that absolutely are.
Cameron, I wanted to ask you a question, something I've always wanted to ask a former player. When you play for Kentucky, you're playing for this huge fan base that's super passionate. These games mean something to people's lives. Like their emotions, whether they have a good day at work the next day or the next week or the next month, relies on these kids, these 18 to 22-year-olds to win a basketball game. Did you feel that pressure? Did you understand how the magnitude when you were playing?
I understood the magnitude because I grew up as a fan. I grew up part of the as a part of the family of how do I say this? Because kind of the former players, I always kind of consider it's a frat. Like, and it doesn't matter what year you play, it doesn't matter what coach you played for. We've all got that one thing in common. And what you're talking about is a lot of what we have in common. We understand who we're playing for, which is ourselves and our family. But it's also growing up in Kentucky like I did, being the son of a former player you see it from a lot of different perspectives. But when you're there, at least and maybe this was a Patino thing, because Patino put so much pressure on you as a player, not only to grow but to perform. That's where the pressure came from. The pressure didn't come from the fans. The fans were, by us at least, ignored is the wrong word, because obviously we wouldn't ignore them. But during a game, they weren't there. And I don't mean to say they weren't loud. They were sometimes. What I'm saying is that our scouting reports were 45 pages long, right? And they were broken down into, every imaginable detail. Coach Patino was doing analytics before there was such a word as analytics, as far as I'm concerned. He had his managers taking stats that weren't official stats, and he would use those to make his decisions. He was doing analytics. But those analytics are stuck in the scouting report for the opposing team. And you got to know it all. Even if you're on the end of the bench like I was for the first 2 years, you got to know it. And so that's what you're worried about. So you're focused on all that stuff. You're focused on the game plan. So when the ball's tipped, honestly, you're not thinking at all about the repercussions of a loss for the fans. You're thinking about the repercussions of a loss and what your coach is going to do to you. Because we won, like my freshman year, we beat Georgia by 12 at home. And Coach Patino he always would talk about, I think it's a Winston Churchill quote, but he would always talk about deserving victory. And his whole thing was, y'all won by 12, but you didn't deserve to win at all. And so he was so mad after that game. That was a noon Saturday game against Georgia, and we were supposed to have Sunday off. So we'd be done by 2. That's all day Saturday. Most of the day Saturday, all day Sunday off. We were like head over heels excited for these 2 days. And then we play a bad game, win by 12, but a bad game. And Coach Somebody comes in the locker room, writes up on the chalkboard, 12:01 a.m., be there, and throws the chalk and walks away. And we had practice at 12:01 Sunday morning for about 2.5 hours, because the NCAA won't let you practice the same day you have a game. So when he found that out, he was like, all right, what's the earliest we practice? 12:01. That's when we're going to practice.
Wow.
So it's those kind of things that you're like, man, that's what you're afraid of. That's where the pressure comes from. But then even Coach always said pressure, and it's cliche, but pressure, you can say that is what makes diamonds, and that's the cliche part. But what Coach used to say is pressure forces you to prepare, right? So it's one of the reasons that I look at not just my time at UK under Coach P, but all of Coach P's time. He hardly ever lost, if he ever did lose a game, that he wasn't supposed to. Meaning, the easy part of the schedule that we're kind of in right now. He never lost one of these games. I never did while I was there. I can't think of a single time we were playing a quote-unquote cupcake and we lost, or it was even close. And part of the reason is because every game is treated the same. But what I do find funny is now on the other side of it, Paul, those fans. I've got a friend. She lives over here, not far from me, and she's an older lady, and she tells me that when Kentucky loses, and I guess it depends on how she looks. She told me this one time, and I was baffled by it. She said she hadn't slept in 3 days because of the loss 3 days ago, and I'm like. Yeah.
It means that much to people,
it does.
And that's what I know. That
100% true.
I know that. And here's the thing: as insane as that is to me,
I haven't slept since Wisconsin.
Stephen, it's kind of what you said. It's like you're letting 13, 18-year-olds, this year 13, 22, 23, 24-year-olds.
It feels way better that they're that old now.
A little bit.
You're letting 13, let's just say, young men decide your happiness.
Yep.
I get being upset about a loss, but go to bed, get some sleep, right? But here's the other part of that. If our fans weren't as nuts as they are, then we wind up, I think, having a dip the way Indiana has had, a dip the way UCLA has had, right?
Yep.
You're talking teams that have had traditions over years. If you're talking about the blue bloods of college basketball, us, North Carolina, Kansas, Duke, you could throw Indiana in there, but UCLA belongs in there because they're 11 national championships. But what have they done recently? Now, recently they played well, but they had huge dips where they were terrible. Indiana, huge dips where they were terrible.
They got absolutely smashed yesterday or 2 days ago.
To Louisville. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, Louisville beat them. Yeah. And then who Louisville beat yesterday? They beat
West Virginia.
West Virginia, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to me, I hate all these early season tournaments simply because it's good that you're getting, you're playing tough teams. And, and what everyone says is, well, these are tournament atmospheres. Have you looked in the stands of these games? There's nothing close to a tournament atmosphere about any of these games. Now, when we played Duke, yeah, that was tournament atmosphere because Big Blue gets in. I mean,
that was tense.
I mean, it
was really tense.
Duke fans did too. Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know what the ratio was to Kentucky versus Duke fans. But the game before that, Michigan State and Kansas, no one was in the stands. No one. And I'm like, what? Okay, you're playing a difficult team, so you're getting lessons out of that, but this isn't a tournament atmosphere. So I don't know, but either way, I see both sides of it. If it weren't for the fans being as nuts as they are, then I think Kentucky easily has a dip. I think, but because they're the way they are, Gillespie's, they don't stay here longer than 2 years. I mean, it's not like, you
say that name 2 more times, you might just show up like Beetlejuice.
But Barnhart's got this hard job of, he made the right pick with Cal. I think we're seeing it. He made the perfect pick in Pope, but the Gillespie thing was a mess. It cannot. And I think he's even said this is the hardest job he's got is picking the head coach. If he has to pick a head coach for basketball, it's the hardest job he's got. And I'm not saying football wouldn't be a difficult position for him either, but he knows that he's got to nail that. Yeah. And I think with Cal, he nailed it. And I think with Pope, he definitely nailed it. He had that dip with Gillespie. But again, the fans, they're not going to stand for 3 years of mediocrity. They're gonna want, and that's why I'm so excited so far. And why I think the portal is so important to us this year is I don't know how else Pope would have done what he's done so far without the maturity of the guys he went out and got. And if you remember what he said earlier, it was, we're not recruiting the most talented guys on the portal for this year's team. We're getting talented guys, but they got to have the bandwidth. And the bandwidth was they have to learn our offense, our defense immediately. And that's why we're seeing this.
And be mature enough to deal with us.
Huh?
And be mature enough to deal with us.
Yeah, which I think part of that too is the coaches, they do everything they can, which is harder because of social media, but they do everything they can to limit the players' exposure to you all. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have that problem.
They've been really good though. Like they engage with the fans more than I've seen a lot of these other, and in a positive way. And I think that's why this team is loved.
Well, I think part of it is they haven't lost yet, right? So everybody's feeling good. I mean, look, when you're 6-0 and you beat the number 6 team in the nation, or let's erase that, right? Because clearly they weren't the number 6 team in the nation, right? Because we were ranked lower and we beat them. So what are they? This is the whole reason polling and preseason polls are just
utter garbage. To be top 5 probably too.
It's just, it's stupid. We make a preseason poll based on what? What the media thinks the team's going to do? Well, all we've done in the first month of the season is see how wrong the preseason polls were, and then we
wouldn't have anything to talk about though.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you all enjoy it. It drives me because it's just here's the thing that really bothers me is the preseason awards. Why are we giving away preseason? This is the preseason SEC Player of the Year. What? He transferred in. He's never played a game in the SEC, but he's the preseason Player of the Year. You all are just not you all, but they're inventing stuff to talk about. And here's the other side of that with the player. If that player does not perform up to that standard, but has a great season, it's the player's fault.
Yeah,
it's the media's fault for being stupid.
I said that a lot with some of the guys we'd bring in that I thought there was a lot of pressure on them. Especially they have the one and done thing in their head. They're 5 stars. They're supposed to go out there and immediately put up numbers. And I felt like when you get into game 8, there's just no time to develop. You get into your game 8, you got 20 something games left. If you haven't hit it, then I mean it might be too late. Some of those guys put too much pressure on themselves. I felt like
it kind of makes, if you think about Cal's tenure here and how he did what he did, which was basically look, it's freshmen every year. Every year it's freshmen. Those are our predominant players, right? for him to get us to 3 Final Fours or 4 Final Fours and 3 title games, whatever it was, and win a title in 50. That's remarkable. I don't care how talented you are. Talent doesn't win championships. Talent doesn't get you the Final Four.
It's 2 title games, right? 4 Final Fours and 2 title games.
Then Arkansas would have been the national championship last year. It was just talent, right? Because they went out, got to hit the portal, and got in a ton of talent, and they were one of the worst teams in the SEC. Which is why, again, what I think Mark's done is so smart. He's gone and gotten great guys, and I think that's what you all are seeing as far as how they handle the media. But what I'm more interested in, and I think Mark is too, because this was Mark's thing when he played, was he had this whole thing about embracing adversity. It was like his mantra to get him through a tough practice. He would say it out loud all the time: embrace adversity, embrace adversity, embrace adversity. Because that's when you find out what kind of team you have. I mean, if we had lost against Duke, we would have still found out what kind of team we had.
Yeah, I agree.
If we lose tonight, we find out what kind of team we have based on how they respond to a loss. That's when you find out. And I think that's what, again, and Mark was begging for that early on, especially after months of just seeing, playing against, each other. The guys and Mark was like, I want them to be tested. I want them to be punched in the face so I can see how we respond. And I still think there's moments for that coming up.
So just so you know, Rando jumped into the chat. He's one of ours. He just had his baby girl. He just had his baby girl pop out, and so that's why he was a little late. They just got back from the hospital, so he's a little late to getting on. So don't worry, he wasn't being rude.
Days old.
Wait a minute. You just had a child?
Yes, on the 26th, and we just had first appointment like an hour ago.
Oh, okay. All right. So you didn't leave your wife at the hospital with the newborn baby.
Nobody might have thought about it.
No, but I probably would have.
Okay. I just want to clarify that because Paul said you just had a baby pop out and now you're here. And I'm like, you may be one of the problems, man.
It's still fresh. They're still fresh. So we have some questions because we're in like a basketball chat. And so we do have a question. And I know you kind of talked about practice, but someone wants to know, how does practice under Pope kind of different than maybe practices under Cal? Like what is that? What is the mechanism like?
So both of them make both Cal practices and Pope practices make me uncomfortable because they're so different from the practices we had under Pitino, where it was shut down, meaning there were no side conversations. Everyone, no matter who you were, whether you were the trainer, the student trainer, the equipment manager, one of the managers, didn't matter who you were, there was to be no talking under Pitino, right? I mean, it was deathly quiet in Pitino practice. Under Cal, there were side conversations. That always made me uncomfortable because I was, especially the first one I ever went to, I was like, all right, he's gonna
little
blow
PTSD,
up
right?
Here,
were you ready for Pitino just to come out of the air and just yell at you?
Yeah. Well, more ready for Cal to blow up on somebody else because I was quiet as a mouse because that's how you behaved at practice. Mark is a lot of it's similar in that it's not nearly as loose as Cal's were, and I'm not slighting Cal for that. That's how he runs his practice. But Mark's is very intentional about everything. And I will also say this: the assistant coaches that Mark has brought in, they are active in every part of practice. Under Cal, they were active sometimes, but the last few years, it seems like Cal was leading practice and kind of was the only one talking most of the time, whereas that is not the case with Pope. Pope has, when he feels like he's got to bring them together or he's got the blue team over here, he's leading. But then on the other end of the court, you've got Coach Brooks, you've got Coach Feger, you've got Coach Hart. They're running the white team, and then you've got they'll if you're watching things, they'll pull guys out, and coach them in the moment and say, hey, you messed up. Especially when you've got like Mark is the lead, and then you've got an assistant coach that's defensive specialist, assistant coach is an offensive specialist. They'll pull guys out in moments and have a word with them. Right? Like just in a quick break, like, hey, you missed this, you missed this. One of the things I love that Mark does that I've never seen any coach do, and I'm not saying another coach doesn't do it, but I've never seen any coach do it, is that he makes his team coach themselves, where if a mistake happens, let's say there's a fast break, and let's say it's a 2-on-2 fast break, and the offense scores much more easily than they should have, he'll blow the whistle and get the two defenders who should have been able to at least stagnate the transition to the point where help can get back, but somehow they gave up an easy layup. And instead of telling them what they did wrong, he'll ask them, what'd you do wrong? And then when they come to him with an answer, and I've seen him do this a couple times, he'll stop them and say, don't tell me, tell your teammate. You two figure out what you did wrong. And I don't know if that's a result of him knowing that he's got mature Division I basketball players, like he's got 7 seniors or whatever it is, that they should know, and they should. But I think a bigger part of it is communication. I want you guys communicating, and you see it on the court where, Mark doesn't do a lot of yelling and coaching from the sideline. He'll do a lot of thinking from the sideline, which is honestly what he does better than anything. I mean, he is in his head. He is 12 steps ahead of everybody. It's kind of like the way Reed Shepherd played last year, where you just got the feeling Reed was 3 or 4 passes ahead of everybody on offense and defense. Mark's the same way. I mean, he is thinking on a level that I don't think anyone quite understands, and I certainly don't understand, even from his words. I mean, the practice I've been to, he's using words that I feel like I know what I feel like I know the concept, but I've never heard this word to describe the concept. Like, and I literally, I've got a list going for the radio show, for the pregame show, of Popeisms, where I'm like, okay, and every time I'm around him and I hear one of them, I'm like, because after practice he'll come over and we'll talk sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I need a definition for this, and this. What are you talking about? Because he'll just use these words, and I'm like, I'm sure you picked these up along the way after you left me, but I have no idea what you're saying. And so, and even, I mean, and he talks to the media the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'll use these words in the media, and I always think it's funny because I'm in the same boat they are. I know he's using these terminologies that they're going to sit there and nod along with, like, yeah, and then look at each other like, what does that mean? What is he talking about? And he doesn't do it on purpose.
It's like me. It's like me writing a paper and using that thesaurus little tab on Word just to make myself smarter.
Yeah, synonyms.
You know what? That's exactly what it's like. It's like, okay, this probably means what this word we used in '96 meant, but I still need it confirmed, or I'm not gonna have any idea what's going on. So it's amazing watching him practice, or watching him run a practice, because it's very disciplined. It's not as tight and closed off necessarily as Coach Pitino's were, but it is very quick. Meaning there's no wasted time. You know what I mean? And I think one of the things that has kind of surprised me, and he and I, after a practice, like, he came over and sat down next to me, and we were just kind of talking, about the old days, and I'm asking him some questions, because what surprised me is he doesn't coach a lot like Pitino did. And one of the biggest ways, and I think he talked about this in the pregame, in Tom Leach's interview with him before the Western game, is he talked about the emotional bucket. And I mentioned this in one of my practice reports for the UK network, because I asked Mark about it, and it was like, he said, Cam, if you remember, we operated in fear constantly. We were constantly afraid of Coach Pitino. He said, and what wound up happening, he goes, we wound up becoming numb, not numb to his coaching, but numb to the way he coached, meaning, like, when he berated us, when he like emotionally undressed us, it just got to the point, and it does happen. Like, that's what I said earlier about Oliver. It's hard to make that adjustment your freshman year. If you can get past your freshman year, usually you can handle it, because he's not intentionally, he doesn't hate you. Certainly feels like he does, but he doesn't. He's just, this is how he expects. So what he wants you to learn, he expects you to learn it quickly and move on. Whereas Mark, looking at that, says, we operated kind of out of fear to the point we got numb to it. And he goes, today, I'm much more, and he had a team of psychologists kind of watching the team. This goes back to, I think, when he was at BYU or maybe Utah Valley. But they were explaining the emotional bucket. Look, all these kids have only so much emotion that they can give every day. And it's not just these kids, it's all of us. And he said what he wanted to do is he wanted to manage that. So on game days and on days before game days, his staff was very careful at managing those buckets so that they were at peak emotionally, right? We've all heard the term emotional intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that factors into basketball as well, because if you go out there emotionally defeated, then how can you possibly play a confident basketball game? And confidence is almost everything when it comes to this. So they do a great job of being intentional about managing, like, this emotional threshold of I'm not going to have a practice where I'm going to drain these guys of it, especially the day of a game and especially the day before a game. And he even qualified that by saying, look, we're not focused. We have to be focused, but we're not going to drain them of the emotions. And that is so different than the way Coach Patino used to coach. That again, it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to question you, dude. You're the head coach of UK now, but are you sure you know what you're doing? Because that's not what we did. And we got to 3 championship games in a row, 96, 97, 98, and almost to a Final Four in 90, 95. But I mean, it's one of those things where you just learn, because knowing him in the past, I just trust him. And it's why I think Shep and I were so excited the day after it got announced he was coming, because let's remember, there was a lot of doubt from UK fans about Danny Hurley, Scott Drew, Mark Pope.
Dodged a bullet on Scott Drew, I think, for sure.
Oh yeah,
boy.
I think we dodged a bullet with both of them.
Yeah, with his meltdowns the last 3 games, my goodness.
I was told by somebody, because again, I didn't know who we were going to go after, and of course, those were the 2 big names that I kept hearing. Hurley, especially coming off 2 back-to-back championships. But I was told by a couple of people in the know, in the business, so to speak, that he's crazy. And you hear someone say that about somebody, and you laugh it off. You're like, oh, okay, he's crazy, right? You know, he's bombastic on the bench. He's loud. He's out of control. Yeah, a lot of coaches like that, and both of them said, no, he's crazy. And I'm like, oh, like
capital C,
like insane. Yes, and I'm like, and again, I laughed it off because I'm like, he can't be that bad. He's just got 2 national championships. He's got to hold it together somehow. And I don't know, these last 3 games, I mean, he's just kind of lost his composure rather easily, especially after coming after. I mean, look, he's proved himself. He's got back-to-backs. I mean, what does he have to prove? Now, I understand you still want to compete, but as a head coach, Division I, and Coach Patino did the same thing. He still was intense after that 96 championship, but the relief on his face post-game was, we all noticed it. We all noticed it because it was like, okay, I got it. Even if I only get 1 and he got 2, and take it away all you want, NCAA. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the relief after that first one, it's like, okay, he was feeling the pressure. So that question, Stephen, you or Paul asked me earlier about fans, he was feeling it, but I still think he was feeling it internally. He is very self-driven.
So we got 2 more questions. I know we got to let you go here in a minute. Rando, I know, has been begging, and then I know Steven's got one more, and then we'll get you out of here.
Yeah. So we were able to talk to Jordan Poydras, which was one of Pope's players for Utah Valley State. So this is not my question, but you talk about practice, and he told us that those things that you described for Pope and communication and making the players coach the team, that dates back to Utah Valley State. He told us that they would do these leadership communication exercises. They would just gather around in a circle and Pope would just wait for someone to start talking. Just like real awkward and just, okay, who's going to actually like step up and be a leader on this team. So, you talk about how you all did practices before, and you talk about how we see these Dan Hurley outrages on the sideline. I'm curious how the new player, college athlete, kind of gets into, like, when they see kind of the way Pope does things, or if they always see that. Because my question was, you see Hurley do that and get a technical, potentially cost his team a chance at a game. Right. If a player does that, can in the following games, can the coach now hold the player accountable, or how's that dynamic go? Because I think
you mean like if a coach, so in Hurley's position, if a player does that the next game, does he have any right to hold the player accountable?
Yes, yeah,
right. And I think in your generation, that 100% plays. Like, it doesn't matter. The coach is the coach. He's the leader. He does. It's don't do as I do as I say.
Yeah, you don't question.
I don't know that works today.
Well, I think Mark might agree with you, and I think therefore I would agree with you, because I think players are different, and I think I don't know because everyone immediately goes to the social media thing, because that's the one thing that stands out is, all right, what's the biggest difference between playing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early, well, social media is one of the biggest, but I don't know that's the only one. But I think you're right. I think it's different. And one of the things different is, look, if I lose respect for my head coach, because I'm clearly here, most likely because I respected him, either in the recruiting process, in either recruiting process, whether it's a portal or whether as out of high school. If I lose respect for my head coach, I mean, that's a big deal. And that's a big, big deal. So if I lose respect for him,
especially when you're getting paid now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that might be one thing that keeps you at a place that you might otherwise transfer from because you've lost respect for your head coach. Because am I going to be able to get this level of NIL compensation somewhere else? And the question is, I don't know. But to answer your question directly, yeah, I think it is a lot. It is different. It is more difficult. And I also think to some degree it's fair. Because it doesn't matter when you do it or what level you do it or what you do it for, but leadership is leadership. And you can't have a do as I say, not as I do attitude. That cannot be, that's not what a leader does. A leader is the complete opposite of that. It is do as I say, more importantly, do as I do. Because the bottom line is, there's a poem that I use all the time when I speak to high school students. And I got it from the locker room at Memorial Coliseum when I played. And it literally had been there since my dad had played in the 60s, called Little Eyes Upon You. And it just simply says, there are little eyes upon you. They're watching night and day. Little ears are quickly taking every word you say. Little hands all eager to do everything you do. And little boys and girls who are dreaming of the day they'll be like you. Now, that's there for us to understand as players. There are a whole bunch of little kids out there who dream of the day they'll wear this uniform and want to wear this uniform. So it's there for us to understand that perspective, understand how lucky we are to be in the position we are. But it's also there for us to understand that we have a responsibility to behave ourselves outside this locker room so that these little kids don't think the way we behave is the only way to behave, meaning how we treat them as fans, how we treat our teammates, explosions from the sidelines, anything like that. People tend to model actions more than they do words from any leader. So I think that's one of the things that, again, Mark is not going to ask anything from his players or his coaching staff that he's not willing to do first. And when he first got here, the one thing that I remember kind of coming up with, how did you describe Mark Pope as a person, not as a head coach, just as a person. And I figured this would transfer over to his coaching. But when I played with him, and remember, when I played with him, that's relative. When I practiced as he played, because I was even in practice, I was on the sidelines, right? I got thrown in occasionally, but watching him, getting to know him, because Shep and I and Walter, we were all in Bible study together every week, so we all got pretty close. But the one thing I remember saying about Pope is he's not the kind of coach that you're willing to run through a brick wall for. He's the kind of coach that's already run through the brick wall for you and expects you to follow him.
That's powerful.
That's who Mark Pope is. That's who he is as a person. That's who he was as a teammate. And undoubtedly, that's who he is as a head coach.
Which is why I'm already planning to have his beautiful face tattooed on me when he gets assignment 9 done.
When he gets what?
Assignment 9 done. That's pretty good.
I got so you've even got your own rules. Like, not yet, not buying in yet until he gets 9 done.
Oh, he's got to earn it. He's got to earn
Rando's
it.
in the military, so he has. He's a little nuts. All right, we just got to forgive him from that perspective.
Hey,
where he gets it from.
I get it completely. I mean, I'm biased more towards Mark. You know, hey, when it happens, because I believe it'll happen sooner rather than later. But maybe that's just biasness. But he knows that better than anybody. He understands exactly what you're saying. And that's the reason you used the word assignment number 9, because he used it first. We know the assignment.
So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up my 8th birthday party in 1998. You played a huge role in it. I know you didn't. You were 900 miles away, but you didn't know you were playing such a huge role, and how that ended up being one of the best birthdays of my life. But because you all were down 17, I think it's the greatest tournament win in Kentucky basketball history. I think there's an argument for it. You not only did you beat Duke, but it was 6 years after the Leitner shot, and doing it with Tubby Smith, and the history that brought as well. And it's his first year, and he wins the title. I mean, I think there's a legitimate argument for that game in particular being the greatest tournament win of all time. But down 17, I know Tubby had some strategic stuff like not calling a timeout when Krzyzewski didn't have any, because he didn't want to give him a chance to settle things down. But when you guys got down 17, I guess this is two-part. One, what changed? I know you've probably talked about this 1,000 times since that day.
I'm talking about it, so it's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be tired. I'm not tired of talking about it either. And then on the tip out there, that gave, you hit the three at the top of the key.
Yeah.
Just having the confidence to pull the trigger there, knowing all the implications and everything. You kind of talked about that earlier. Just kind of, you're in the moment, you're in the game, you're not really thinking about all the other stuff. But just a kid from Kentucky who hits one of the biggest shots in history. Not only that, but Scott Padgett, also a kid from Kentucky, hits the one that.
Let's be fair. Scott's shot was so much bigger than mine, and he doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves. I mean, I got lucky because I had a Sports Illustrated photographer take a photo of my shot from the upper arena of the Tropical field, or the whatever it was called, and he did it with a remote trigger, and it just caught all 10 players on the court, and it was right at the apex of my shot. And honestly, I feel like the lore around that shot for me has become, in large part, it's grown larger because of that stupid poster. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, I've got 800 of them out in my garage. I sell them, right? I sell them at my ministry events. They help me raise money for my ministry. I'm honored to have people think that's, one of the biggest shots in Kentucky basketball history. My problem is that I watched Scott hit his with 44 seconds left in that game that basically ices the game. That's the game winner. And nobody, not no one, because you brought it up, but most fans, I don't know if Scott ever gets asked about his. I get asked about mine all the time. And all I want to remind people of is, thank you. Scott's was the bigger shot. And
yeah, but yours gave us the lead though. So it was like,
I know, but Stephen, the moment it capped the comeback, right?
Yes, and it made us believe we're going to do this. That's what it did for, I think, a lot of fans. Like, okay, we got it now.
But personally for me, it was my first shot of the tournament that I'd made. I was over at that point. So for me personally, it was like thank goodness.
Hey, shoot or shoot.
Well, and to answer that other question you asked, Stephen, that's right. That's why the ball bounced out. And again, just from the photograph, it bounced right under Scott's outstretched hands. And then I just love looking at the picture because you got Scott looking at me, Shep looking at me, and I always joke like they're both just so jealous right now. Like they desperately wish that ball had bounced to them. But I didn't think about it. There wasn't a preparation for it. It was literally the ball bounced to me, and I did the one thing that I had done literally over 1 million times in my lifetime, which was catch and shoot. I mean, I didn't think about what the outcome might be. I didn't think about where we were in the game. I didn't realize it was putting us up for the point. In that split second, it's just you do what you've done your entire life. As far as what Tubby did, and the comeback in and of itself, the really cool thing is, and this is not to take away from Tubby at all, because it was still Tubby's. This is what good coaches do. They rely on their assistant coaches. Yeah. It was Tubby's assistant coaches that reminded him, because look, as a head coach, that's why you have assistant coaches. You're not aware of everything going on. You can't be. You've got to watch your 5 guys, their 5 guys, and you've got to be in this. As far as keeping up with timeouts, keeping up with fouls, that's what your assistant coaches are for, right? So, and Tubby said this before himself. His assistant coaches are the ones that stopped him from calling the first timeout. He was getting ready to call one in the middle of the run. And Mike Sutton, who wound up coaching at Tennessee Tech, Mike Sutton stopped him and said, no, coach, they're out of timeouts, right? So at that point, now Tubby's not calling any more timeouts. He knows, but it took his assistant coach to remind him of it. So it became his strategy, Stephen, but it wasn't like him thinking, well, they're out of timeouts, so I'm not calling one. If we're not for Mike Sutton saying, coach, they're out of timeouts. And if you go back and watch what I love, you go back and watch the game, the timeouts that they called, Krzyzewski didn't call one of them. They were all called on the floor.
Oh my gosh!
By the players who were in dangerous is a stupid word, but they were in moments of we're going to return the ball over. I got to call a timeout.
That's where you could still jump out of bounds and call the timeout. What did Tubby say in that? He did call a timeout when it was, I think, 86-84. What did he say in that timeout? And what was, do you kind of know like what the justification was for taking one there? Was just to make sure you didn't
foul? I'll be
foul?
honest, I don't even remember that timeout. I don't. And the funny thing is, if it were not for the video of the game itself, which my dad watched the Utah game and the Duke game, and I'm not exaggerating, every day for the next 2 years after those 2 games.
That's so awesome.
I would get home. Dad would get home from work, and he would have the VHS tape in of either the Duke or the Utah game, and he would just watch. That's what he did.
I think my dad did too.
Even at the, and I've heard so many people do that, But for your dad to have played at UK and for you to walk in from work or wherever I was, a road trip or whatever, and he's watching a game that happened 2 years ago, and that's his habit, and which it's a fine habit.
Awesome.
It's better than watching the news, for crying out loud. But to watch him do that, it's like it kind of gave me that moment of, okay, because look, when you win a championship or you hit a shot against Duke or you beat Duke in a big comeback or whatever, you don't really believe you've done it until years later. It's like last year with Reed. I don't think what Shep and Stacy got to enjoy, I don't think they'll fully understand for another 10 years. You know, I mean, the mere fact that Reed had the year he had, the mere fact that he went, was it third or second in the draft?
I think it was third, right?
Third, yeah. The mere fact that he went third. I mean, and again, this goes back to the presumptions we make about the talent of players. DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw, when they came in, and again, it's nothing against them, but when they came in, remember, they were trading off. Number one overall recruit. It changed like 3 times after they committed to us. They changed. Well, neither one of them made it to the NBA after 1 year. Aaron Bradshaw, I mean, had a terrible freshman year. Part of it was injury. I mean, you know, and he didn't follow Cal to Arkansas. He's up at Ohio State. DJ's still in college, right? But the worst player, quote unquote, of that recruiting class, the number 5 guy, ranked last of all of our recruits, is the guy that got drafted 3rd in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
The number 1 guys are still in college, and I'm not dispersed. I'm not. This is not about them at all.
Wasn't Dillingham right above him? He wasn't as high as some of the other guys, right?
As far as drafting or recruiting.
Recruiting. I don't think Dillingham was.
Honestly, I think the 4 of them. So DJ, Bradshaw, Dillingham, and who am I leaving out?
Wagner.
Edwards.
Wagner. Yeah.
Justin.
Well,
Edwards.
yeah. You had Wagner. You had Edwards, Wagner, and Z.
I'm leaving one out, but whoever it is, they as great as they were, they can't control who ranks them what, right?
Correct.
So now Aaron Bradshaw shows up, has a so-so freshman year, and the easy thing for us to do is to, kid's not as good as we were told he was. Well, maybe that's not the kid's fault. Maybe it's the people who told you he was that good. And that's what bothers me about the preseason stuff. Whether it's recruiting or whatever, you've got a whole bunch of people who arbitrarily decide how good these kids are. And the coaches have something to do with that. But it's like if a kid doesn't pay off here his freshman year, he's a failure. He's a washout. He's not. Dude, when I played, you had 3 years to become who you were supposed to be. Now you got 1 year. And that may be just in the Cal system, because I don't know what Mark's going to do as far as the portal and recruiting freshmen goes the next few years. But I mean, it's just weird to me how we can so easily decide a kid has failed because they've not reached up to the potential that other people have set for the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I got off on that, Stephen. That wasn't your question.
that was a good answer, I think.
So.
Well, look, we know you got a lot going on. You got basketball tonight. Before we let you go, give us your score prediction and anything else you want to. Maybe we can get some of those posters to support your ministry, and we'll give them away to some people. Or if you
I will. I tell you what, text me an address, and I'll send you guys some.
Oh, I appreciate it.
So after the last game, I think honestly, we respond well because. And there's one other thing Kentucky fans have to get used to the idea of. It does go back to the idea of if you live by the 3, you die by the 3. And the other day, we died by the 3. We just didn't lose because of our defense and because of a whole bunch of other stats, right? I mean, we played a solid game. We just didn't shoot well. We're going to have more games like that. And the reality is we're going to have games like that where we're playing a team that's good enough that if we have a bad shooting night, we may not win. All that's fine right now because, again, Paul, I think you said this earlier as a reminder of, and this is all, you don't win championships in November.
Yeah.
You win them in April.
Yep.
So all of it is leading up to that. So I think we respond really well, though, to not shooting well against, who was it, Georgia State? Or is that tonight? That's tonight, isn't it?
Yeah. Western
Kentucky. Thank you. I think because we didn't shoot well against them, I do think we shoot well tonight. But I will tell you this, you can't control how you're shooting sometimes. Everything else, like defense especially, you can control your defense. It's the one thing that you can control as a team. because that's just a matter of thinking, reacting, and effort. That's all that is. Shooting, man, your shot can be dead on accurate as far as your form, and you can miss every shot. And I've seen teams and been on teams where in the layup, the 30-minute layup line or whatever, where they do layups and then get some shots up. I've missed every shot except the layups. Like the Florida game where I had 31 points and 8 threes. I did not make a 3-point shot in warmups.
That's
did
crazy.
Not.
It's weird how that works.
You come out and you're in the zone in the game. And the
got all those misses out of the way.
Too, where I'll hit everything in warmups, and I won't hit anything during the game, and it's maddening. But you can't control that. So I guess I'm hoping that we respond well tonight. What I'm almost certain of is that our defense will be much more focused and much more difficult tonight, because I promise that's one thing coaches worked on. And the other thing is, as far as working on, is the rebounding, because that's going to be something we've got to work on all year, because we've been out rebounded by almost every team, out offensive rebounded.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal to us because we shoot a lot of threes rebound long, and we're about possessions. I mean, the whole strategy around our offense is as many possessions as possible, meaning we're turning teams over, we're getting deflections, we're getting steals. Those lead to turnovers. We are getting rebounds. We're limiting them to one possession every time they touch the ball. We are getting multiple possessions because we're crashing the offensive boards, because we get a better chance. As Mark said, there's a 5% better chance of getting an offensive rebound off a three, because they rebound long, than there is otherwise. Well, if we're not taking advantage of that mere 5%, this is where the analytics get really deep. But if we're not taking advantage of that, then we're failing, because part of the reason we shoot so many threes is because that gives us a better chance of getting that offensive rebound by 5%, leading to 5%, hopefully more offensive possessions, which leads to more opportunities to shoot, more opportunities to score, and more opportunities to win. So all that to say, I'm guessing we win by 30 tonight, and I bet I'd be surprised if we don't hit the century mark yet again. So no matter what happens, I think we'll hit 100 tonight.
One of these days, we're going to break that record for most threes made in a game.
What is it? What's it up to?
It's 20. So the record would be 22.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh, we'll do that this year. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, with Kobe Bryant,
dude is a sniper. He's legit a sniper.
I walked by him the other day. This was right before walkthrough, and I walked by him, and I was pretending to be mad at him. I'm like, because this is when he was shooting 78% from the three, and I walked by him and I said, dude, I was here 4 years, I've got one record. So help me if you take that record away from me this year. and he looked at me, smiling and laughing. He said, what's the record? I said, 3-point percentage for a season. He said, what'd you shoot? I said, 53%. And he looked at me like, I'm not going to hit that. I'm like, dude, you're 20 points over it right now. You're going to break it. And just so you know, when you do, we're going to have words. And he's laughing. And the funny thing is, man, I hope he smashes it. Because, I mean, if he keeps shooting like this, and here's the thing, all these dudes are just such great guys. There is not a bad guy among these guys. And I don't know if it's because they're mature or they're just great guys, and Mark just was smart enough to go after good dudes. But, man, I can't tell you how just – this is going to sound weird – how sweet these guys are. I mean, they are just a sweet bunch of young men that are intentional about basketball, but, man, off the court, like, and look, I've never had this done before. If I'm at a practice, or let's say another former player's at practice, they will come up and introduce themselves, or, I've been to several, so they at least know me by sight if they don't remember my name, and they'll come up and say, hey, like, we're best buds. And it's like, okay, just get out there and practice, man. I'm glad to see you too. But it's like, they're just kind people. And I think that's what Paul, you or Steven, whoever was talking about, the way they are with the fans.
Yeah.
They are really great with the fans. They're never going to be Kenny Walker. No one's ever going to be Kenny Walker with the fans because he's the best of the best. But these guys are wonderful with the fans.
I think it goes to oh my bad. It goes to an interview we had with Ansley. And he was just talking about how, like, you were just talking about how a lot of the kids that we've had in the last couple of years have been told their whole life how great they are. These kids are coming from a place where they've had to get out of the mud, right? Ansley was like, I'm not supposed to be playing at Kentucky, but I get the opportunity to. So I think they're all taking advantage of that. Yep, I mean, they have to be good people, which they are. They're taking advantage of the opportunity. They're all hungry. And I think that's why we've all fallen in love with everybody on this team, because they are so likable and they all have their little dynamics. You have Brea, who's who can shoot the ball well and is playing to the crowd. You got Ortega and Lamont, defensively flexing on people. You got Kerr, who's out there just a complete menace. Like, everybody has their dynamic on this team that we love. And wouldn't it be something if
it's
Pope got it
it's
done
what
here?
Kerr said the other day, and it's an old interview, I think. But someone was asking Kerr about maybe it was like right when he decided to come here, but he was explaining why he came here, and his only answer was, "It's Kentucky."
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, and you make a perfect point. Not that these guys weren't, told they were great as kids, but they weren't number one draft picks, right? They went to school. The schools they went to, you could say to some degree they settled. Maybe the schools did, maybe they did, because look, I think to some degree every high school kid wants to play for one of the top five, whoever that is.
Yeah.
Is it UConn? Is it Duke? Is it Carolina? Is it Kentucky? That's what they want to do. But you know what? Just like I did, Kentucky wasn't interested in me, so I was going to go to Georgia until Kentucky said I could walk on. But I think that's what we've got is a whole bunch of guys on this team that are so thrilled to be here. And remember Mark's press conference, and what he said is that they are not, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it was so impactful even to me, and I'm ashamed that I can't remember precisely, but that the favor is not us letting them wear the uniform, right? That's not the favor. The favor is no. Or no, that's what he says. That is the favor, is that you get to wear the uniform, now do it proud, right? I mean, you're not here doing us a favor. We're doing you a favor by letting you wear the uniform. And these guys, and that's a paraphrase, it's not precisely what he said, but these guys have that attitude of, I can't believe I'm at Kentucky either. And I didn't know y'all had Ansley on, but Ansley would be a perfect example. I mean, and those to come in and to say, I don't belong here, but I'm here and I'm going to earn my way to belonging here. That's what I had to go through. Because I told Pitino, if I never played in my 4 years, but I got to wear 21 with Mills on the back, just like my dad did, that was my dream. And
That's
one
awesome.
of the biggest things I'm thankful for is that Coach Pitino would never allow me to dream so small, which is why he treated me the same way he treated his McDonald's All-Americans, meaning he yelled at me as much as he yelled at them. And as much as I didn't like him for it at the time, I adore him for it now, because I would never have wound up. I would have never hit that shot against Duke were it not for him forcing me, yelling at me, coaching me. Every shot I took in individual instruction, always dissecting my shot every single time and reminding me what I was doing wrong. It's not fun to hear in the moment, but if you can take it as coaching, it turns into great things one way or the other, whether that's national championships or 3-point shooting records or just being the best you could be. That's a great thing. So the wonderful thing about Mark is I think he's capable of doing both. He is going to coach you, correct you, but do it in such a way to not drain your emotional bucket so that you've got everything to give for him on game day.
Cameron, before we let you go, let everybody know about your ministry if they want to support, learn more, any of that kind of stuff. Go ahead and shout that out before we let you go.
I'm in year 26 of ministry, which is funny because I was always asked after my senior year, what are you going to do next year? Because I wasn't going pro. Everybody knew that. I knew that. And I knew I felt called to ministry since I was 12. So I had everybody ask me, what are you going to do next year? I said, I'm going to ministry. And then I was invariably asked, mainly by the media, then what are you going to do? As though it was I'm going to do it for a year and then I'll get a real job, which was never the plan. The plan was, no, this is my calling. This is what I'm doing. So I've been doing it for 26 years as of this past June. And I just travel and share my faith. I mean, it's honestly it sounds oversimplified to say that, but that's precisely what I do. So I go around and I'm no matter hardly anything I'm asked to do, I'll say yes to just about anything if I can share Jesus. So I've done that for 26 years. And honestly, and I say this sincerely, one of the biggest ways people, if there are believers out there listening that can support me, is just by praying for the ministry and praying for me for opportunities to speak. For me, honestly, to walk the walk, meaning to be as like Jesus as possible, which is an impossibility, but it's still something we're commanded to do. And to live the life that I'm supposed to live as a Christian. That's what I need the most. Because honestly, that's whether I have a ministry or not, I'm a Christian. Therefore, I should be walking with Christ. And so people praying for me to do that, I love, because I screw up moments all the time and I hate them. And I hate them in part because that's not who I should be, but I also hate them because I know a lot of people know I'm a believer, and I know a lot of people know who I am because of Kentucky basketball. So that combination puts pressure on me to, like, I'll give you a perfect example and I'll be brief. But I had a 4-year opiate battle. I had a 4-year battle with opiates because I had 2 herniated discs in my lower back, was put on opiates, and basically was to the point year 3 or 4 where I was overtaking. I was doubling up on my prescription. I was going through withdrawals every month. I was lying to my family and friends about, are you okay? You know, because they started noticing issues. The only good thing I can say about it is I never illegally obtained them, but I wasn't always honest with my doctor either.
Yeah.
And it was embarrassing to have to admit that. And what I finally realized is I don't have control over my life. And Jesus doesn't have control over my life. I mean, he's not Lord of my life. These drugs are Lord of my life. And when I came to that conclusion, and thankfully I had 2 very good doctors who helped me get off of it, and 2 very good parents who were the ones who helped convince me that you're not yourself, something's going on. But I bring that up because it was hard to admit that publicly for the first time. I did it on my radio show about 8 years ago, but it was hard to admit because
as men, it's hard to admit things too, right? Like we want to be strong and we want to be everything for, you know, our families. And it's so not only that, right? Like it's powerful as a man, but all the things that you've accomplished and people can then relate, you know, and whether it's not have to be sports, it's just in life, you know, and that's a powerful message.
And it is hard to admit that you are a slave to a little pill. It's embarrassing to admit that. But I will tell you this, and it's the reason I bring it up with you guys, is that it is so easy to share today. I mean, that first time, terrifying. But the moment I did it, it was like, I mean, it was like the weight of the world off my shoulders because I had admitted it publicly. Because I didn't go to rehab. There weren't a lot of people who knew. And there still aren't a lot of people that know. But when they find out, they're shocked. And it's like, yeah, no, it's easy to get hooked on. It is easy. But you said it perfectly, Paul. As a man, especially, you don't want to show weakness. You don't want to admit weakness, but it's necessary, and it's necessary to do it sometimes because when you show weakness, what you're hopefully showing is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And showing humility, that's when you grow. And I always look at it this way: arrogance repels people from you as a person. Humility draws people to you. And simply as a believer and a Christian, I'm supposed to draw people to me, not so they can know me, but so that I can show them Christ. I mean, that's the goal. And that was one of the reasons when I went through my divorce in the early 2000s, it was hard to admit that publicly. But the more I did it, even from the pulpit sometimes, the more people I'd have coming up to me afterwards and saying, I'm going through the same thing. And that's what's happened with the opiate addiction, which, by the way, this is going back, I finally beat him in 2014. So we're going back more than, I guess, 11 years now, or 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
But that was the thing of when I finally started including that in my testimony or in my messages, I'd have people come up with family members that were addicted, they themselves were battling. I started getting phone calls and Facebook messages from people that literally were in the moment high and were on opiates and were admitting it in the moment, but saying, I so desperately want to get off of them. And that's the scary thing about opiates, because I promise you, every addict that's out there, they desperately want these things out of their lives. They just don't know how to get there because it's such a physical addiction. I mean, it really, the withdrawals themselves are like the worst flu you can possibly imagine. And the only way to fix it is that next pill. And without help, that's the only way to fix it. And that's not how you ultimately fix it. So what my doctor did is she gave me one more prescription, but she handed it to my dad. You want to talk about humbling? When you're 30-something years old and your parents still have to baby you because you can't be trusted around a bottle of prescription pills, that is humiliating. And so she gave it to my dad, and my dad went and got it filled. And then my mom and dad, because they lived with me at the time, my mom and dad were responsible for giving me the pill, or, on a titration dose down to 0. And when I finally hit, and I took that last half a pill a month later, and because I was terrified, 6 hours, am I going to start to feel the withdrawals again? And I didn't. And I wept for like 4 hours because it was like,
it's awesome.
I beat it. And I'll tell you, the other thing is I had carpal tunnel syndrome and had surgery about 5 years ago. And they gave me the same drug post-op. And I told them, I said, I don't want this drug. Is there another one you can give me? Because this one has my name written on it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, because honestly, this is supposedly one of the weakest opiates. What I would say is called tramadol. It was advertised as one of the weakest, one of the most non-addicting.
I just had to take a bunch of it for my tooth thing that I had.
They used to sell it as one of the most least addictive, least dangerous, safest. I've been told by several anesthesiologists that I've worked with since that, oh no, that's an out and out lie. But that's how they were sold. So they gave me tramadol for this. And I'm like, okay, so I either live in pain for 2 or 3 days, or I guess I was struggling. So I took them for 2 days appropriately, and then didn't need them anymore. And that was the key. It's like, okay, I don't feel like I need them anymore. Do I have the courage to throw this bottle away now? And I did. And I broke down in tears because it felt like, okay, I beat it. Because once you've been addicted to something for 4 years, there's always a worry that, okay, at the worst, if I hit a down spiral in my life, am I going to be tempted to go back to that for some relief? Mm-hmm. And that's what's scary. It's like, I've had it beat for 10 years, but that doesn't mean I've got it beat for the rest of my life. But sitting in the next room is my wife and my stepson, and for no other reason than them, I can't get tempted. I can't have the stuff around me, and I can't fall to it again because I just love them too much. So anyway, I know that was a longer answer than you expected. No, all my answers were longer than y'all expected. So because that's usually the way it works. But anyway,
hey, we appreciate you giving us the time, mate. You can talk as long as you want, but we appreciate it.
Look, I love doing stuff like this, especially with podcasts like yours that just has that when we get to talk about this stuff in a long form. But happy to do it.
Yeah, listen, hey, we're anytime you want to come back, we appreciate it. And we really appreciate you sharing, your story, because the more people that hear that, that can save lives, literally can, just admitting that. And so I really appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you coming on and giving us so much time, more than we thought you would give us. So we're very thankful for that. Enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully we win, and hopefully we get to have you on again sometime in the near future.
Love to, guys. Anytime you want.
Appreciate it.
All right, you have a great day.
Yep, have a great one.
Okay.
That was one hell of an interview, I'm not going to lie.
That's cool. I love that.
That was, yeah. I think Rando's over there. It feels a little bit right now.
Yeah, I mean that's why this has been so cool that we started this whole process. We got on there to talk ball, and then like that message for 20 minutes just takes us into a path of like, we all need that piece of that message, right? Because it might not be opiates like he was stuck on. It's something else that we're addicted to, or something that's kind of pulling us away from what's important. And that's like a quick reminder of like, damn, okay, like got to keep the main things. And Kentucky basketball is massive for all of us. But there's other things that we have to focus on are important, and he's got it figured out, which is nice to know that someone like that, someone that you look up to. Steven, you said your 8th birthday in 98, so I think we're both 90s babies, right on 90. So
yeah, 1990.
So to have someone who is like a legacy guy for us that we looked at with that team, to be like, he can struggle. My normal behind can also struggle. I can figure it out too. So that was a powerful message that he gave us, and the vulnerability he showed to share it again, it was pretty massive.
Yeah. I followed his story, a little bit, and I read Rex Chapman's book. Who, he also struggled with something kind of similar. So but overall, just like talking to somebody who that was like my introduction to Kentucky basketball. Now this thing's such a big part of my life. It was really cool. Thanks to you guys for inviting me to do that too. That was awesome.
No, man, we're glad you're. It's crazy how little things in life, like Rando just said, and it's kind of like the moments, right? Of, 6 months ago, I don't even know he exists. We just all randomly start talking on a space, and now, maybe somebody was listening the last 10, 15 minutes to him tell a story. And because we all met through this and he came on and maybe that was the right time, it's not us, right? Like it's part of the plan, but it just shows like little moments that can define, right? And I'm not trying to, hopefully nobody thinks we're trying to like say, oh, look at us. No, it's the little things that you never know how it could affect somebody else's life. And it's just like such a cool thing. And through sports, and that was a really cool I think I've done about 500-ish of these things. And that was probably one of the top 5 to 10 moments, I think, on a podcast of just openness of things that are, serious and can really change people. So that was awesome.
Yep. Shout out Joe for setting it up.
Yeah. Joe, his new name is Producer Joe. For anybody wondering. Real quick before we let you guys go, score predictions for tonight and tomorrow. Who you got as your MVPs?
Who wants to go first? Yeah.
We'll go tonight first. You go. Go ahead.
Oh, we go. All right. I'll take. I'm going to take Kentucky tonight. They're 31.5 point favorites. Although Georgia Southern football has been known to like mess with some SEC teams in the past.
Florida,
Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Who else they got? But I don't think we're gonna have any problems tonight. I'll say Kentucky 91-61. Well, maybe they don't cover, but you get 30 points. And then are we just going to Louisville? We're just gonna do Louisville right after that.
Go ahead. Just do both. Yeah, just
all
do
right.
both.
You know what? All week I said no way Kentucky wins, and this is finally the time Louisville gets them. But I've talked myself into it. All I needed was a few days. I got the Cats 21-17. I think our defense is gonna show out. And you know what? We're gonna score over 20 points against a Power 5 team. There you go. And Cutter, how about this? 300 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Hey, I like that.
Now we just go into next year with all we talk ourselves into 10-2 again going into next year.
For those listening, by the way, tomorrow, real quick, this is the first time we haven't put it out. We have a live remote tomorrow at Parlor Donuts, 8:30 to 10 a.m. tomorrow in Lexington. We have JoJo Kemp, Garrett Juice Johnson, Jeff Badette, and Lynn Elsdown Bowden Jr.
Man, what a lineup!
It will be a part of the whole show, I believe. So tomorrow, I don't know. Like I kind of was like, I'm gonna pep everybody up. I'm nervous now because now I got to do it in front of the dude that just made Louisville, that's made Louisville his little play toy in his career. I don't know. I'm nervous.
Yeah, he ran all over them. That was like one of the more fun ways to beat them.
He had some of the best sound bites talking smack against Louisville ever. Like we don't say that name around here. Wow.
Yeah, he embraced it. Those guys.
Yeah. All right, Randall, what do you got?
All right, so for basketball, I got 101-67. MVP is going to be Carr. That's how it's going to go. We hit the century mark. Cam Mills said it was going to happen, so I believe it. And then for football, 23-21, Cats get a W. Rayner kicks the game-winning field goal.
Love it.
And MVP is Deion Walker. His last game in Krog, he's going to absolutely tear up that O-line, and he's going to make Shuff or Show, however you say his last name, looking down at his feet all game, and we'll show everybody why the SEC reigns supreme and the ACC will always be baby brother.
I like the way you think. So for basketball tonight, I actually think Kentucky's going to make a run at the 3-point record tonight, like we did a couple games ago. I got 106-63. I got Brea as my MVP. I think Brea is going to have a monster night tonight. This is one of those games against those teams that he's so hard to guard in these games. I think he's probably going to have another 6-7 3-point kind of night. So that's there. For football, I think we have some fun. I got Kentucky 34-24. I got Cutter as my MVP. I also think Cutter has a big game. When you do a lot of, like, when you look at a lot of the film from Kentucky and you look at the offense and the throws where guys are like, I mean, this is the game where either we find out Bush Hamden was not as bad as we thought or is not where we thought he is. But when you look at how Cutter
scored 34, I owe Bush Hamden a massive apology.
Listen, I've heard two things out of practice. I heard Willie and Macklin are balling in practice this week. And that's like they're going to be a big focus. And Willie and Cutter have a big connection, right? Remember, they've been playing on the scout team, the twos, right? So they have a lot of chemistry together. You saw him and Macklin, how they were getting it. You saw guys getting open. I don't think if Louisville has a big weakness, it's their defense. They also lost their best cornerback. I think he's still suspended. I don't think he's back, right? Is it Harmon or what? Who he's the guy who got arrested for like choking someone. I don't think he's back. Maybe I'm wrong. Nobody's backing me up on this. But they've given up a lot of yards. They gave up 600 yards to Miami. Miami could throw the ball. They've given up, they're averaging, I think, giving up right around 300 and some odd yards a game. I think Rando's right. I think the defense, I think the defense scores. I don't necessarily think that 34 is necessarily all on the offense. I think some of that, I think you're going to get a defense. I think you might get a defense and special teams score like touchdowns and the offense scores 20, right? I think you might get some of that. But I think a lot of the frustration comes out today or tomorrow. I think Kroger Field's probably hopping because people are going to be excited about Cutter. It's during the day. It's going to be sunny. It's probably better than a night game when it's going to be 20 degrees. So that's going to probably help a hell of a lot. Yeah. So give me the Cats 34-24.
Love it.
And then we can all talk about how it's going to be on Monday.
L's down. The matchup of L's the ones down. is going to be big too because it's going can Mad Max shut down Ja'Cory Brooks? Because that's going to be the matchup. So I don't know if he's planning on shadowing. I haven't been at practice, but if he does, that's going to be the thing that can give us a big leg up. If our NFL Sunday corner can shut down their number one receiver.
Yeah, I agree. Gentlemen, thank you so much for jumping on. I will download this and I will get it out also on the podcast. Throw the L's down. It is Louisville Hate Week. It doesn't matter what happens. We could be 0-11 right now. I'm still picking the Cats until Louisville proves that they can compete with us. And I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, I'd probably get clipped and talked a lot of shit too on tomorrow night, but it's whatever. It's fine. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate Cameron Mills. That was an amazing experience. Go Cats.